On behalf of the Bernardine Franciscan Sisters and Alvernia University, I welcome you to the McGlinn Conference Center. It's called McGlinn because the family would very generously help to defray our expenses for the conference center. As a community, the Bernardine Franciscan community, we realized we need to be able to reach out, ironically, to the people of Reading and beyond. And so we built this, and you do come. The other piece, you're in a convent. 45 sisters live here. We're the grandmother of Alvernia University, which is just over 50 years old. I think it looks great for its wear. Also, our Bernardine Franciscan Sisters internationally have agreed to pray for all those who come to the center here. So you have the prayers of over 400 Franciscans and associates in Mozambique, Brazil, Dominican Republic, Liberia, West Africa. One of the more important things, outside the door to your right, ladies, is the ladies' room. Men, you're going to have to walk 20 feet further or farther down the road. Also, there's a duplicate set downstairs. The other piece is the lights are automatic. We don't need to call an electrician. Number two, most of the faucets work by themselves, so no plumber either. So thank you. Enjoy your afternoon. God bless.
Well, hello, everybody. Hi. I'm glad to see everybody that could attend today. I welcome you. Thank you, Sister Sean. She's been a terrific host, as well as Alvernia has. We really appreciate the time and energy that she's put into today to make sure everything is running correctly for us. Before I get started, because I'm notorious for getting to do this, I want to thank a few people. First, I'd like to say thank you to the steering committee, many are here with us today, who have helped to steer this process since probably August, I believe, or July, when we put the RFP, we finalized the RFP. I'd like you all to just sort of raise your hands. I know we have Ellen Horan from the Greater Reading Chamber, John Scott from Greater Reading Economic Partnership. I saw John here somewhere. Oh, there he is. Chris Kraus, I don't believe he's here yet, from White Star Tours. Tim Joyce from Land Displays, who's the chairman of the Greater Reading Convention and Visitors Bureau Board. George Reinl, who is with RKL, he's our treasurer. Dan Klauser, who's with Big Vision Foundation. I saw Dan over here. Sime Bertolet, who is with the Berks History Center, and Ted Kolva, who's with Body Zone Sports and Wellness Center. And I think, just let's give them a round of applause, because they've spent a lot of time on this process, helping us to figure out the direction that Greater Reading and the tourism industry needs to take. I'd also like to just ask everybody on our board to wave their hands so you know everybody from Greater Reading Convention and Visitors Bureau. We have a lot of board members here today, and I appreciate your time and efforts as well. And then, finally, I want to thank the Why Missing Foundation, the Berks County Community Foundation, and the Hawley Myrtle Queer Fund, the Greater Reading Chamber of Commerce, the City of Reading, and the Greater Reading Convention and Visitors Bureau for the support that they gave to make sure that we were able to obtain Bill Geist to help drive our direction, but also for the support that they've given me as well as our organization to ensure that we could try to create a much better place for all of our residents, but also all of our visitors to come and enjoy. So with that said, I'd like to welcome you to the Destination Assessment Reveal. I know we've all been very excited about this. We couldn't wait to hear what the outcome is, what Bill has found out for us. We're going to hear the results. Many of you here in the room today have taken part in the efforts to help our community understand as a destination what direction we should take, what niche markets we should attack, so to speak, so that we can grow our tourism trade, and what it will take to do that. Now, I caution you. Some things today you might hear, you're going to say, that was a no-brainer, duh. We sort of thought this was what it was going to be, or we've talked about it for many years. But now we have the research to back it up, and we know the steps to take, which is most important. And we're hearing it from an outsider who, because we all know, we don't always believe intuitively what we think is right. But when we hear it from somebody else, we go, oh, yeah, okay, you know, I was on track. Some things are real challenges, but if we are really serious about changing Greater Reading, and making it a true destination and a great place to work, live, and play. We now have the tools to create that vision and to move and mold our future. I'm proud to say that recently the state came out with its 2013 tourism economic study numbers. The impact of tourism, once again, in Greater Reading, Berks County is over $1.3 billion. That's a lot of money. Direct spending, which is just as important, has now topped off over $800 million a year. That's $800 million that visitors bring to our area every year. It's almost unfathomable when you think about it. It's a lot of money. But think about what you hear today, and if we work towards creating and molding this future where we want to go, that $800 million could easily turn into $900 million, $1 billion, or more in direct visitor spending. We just need to work together to do that. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy. Everything we do, we have to be aware that it's also going to create support for our economic development partners, for them to work towards gaining more business to come into the area and having young professionals come here and stay, or those that are here to continue to have a relationship with Greater Reading. But we all know that anything anything that's not easy is worth fighting for. We need to do this. My hope is today, after you hear what is going on, the things that we need to look at, the things that we need to grow, the risks that we need to take. And we all know it's not easy. Nobody likes to take a risk, but you know, hey, if we don't do it, then we need to shut up and say, okay, we're going to live with what we have. But the one thing I know is Greater Reading is a community that rallies together. We all come to the table when we know there's a need and there's a desire to get something done. I've seen it for many years. I've been a part of some things. I've watched others do it. I know there's young and old in this room that all want the same end result, to just be and have a successful area to live in and work. So I offer to you that when we leave here today, go out, say to the rest of the world, wow, this is really great information we found out. You know what? We have to figure out a way to make this happen. I hope you can rally with me. I wish I had some rally towels. Drew, maybe you can take care of that for us next time. But I say, yeah, the wave. But I say, listen, try to understand. If you have questions at the end, Bill is willing to take questions. But encourage others to come along. So, and with that, I'd like to invite Bill Geist of Zeitgeist Consulting up to share with us what he's found out.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Crystal, and thanks to the board, to the steering committee, and to all of you for coming out today. This has been a really fascinating and fun process for us on our team, and also for our friends at H2R Research, and they'll be joining us virtually in a few minutes to reveal some of their findings as well. This process, as Crystal said, began in the summer with the RFP. We actually arrived in market in, I think, the first week of October, during the art festival, during the nationals. I mean, it was a busy weekend, and we were here for 4 or 5 days consuming the destination as first-time visitors. We have a destination assessment team that comes in, and that was really the basis for how we started our work. Then later in the fall, it was H2R with their research into the mind of the leisure consumer, into the mind of the meeting planner, the sports tournament planner, and the motor coach operator. And then we also spent some time with you. Many of you in this room were part of those focus groups that we had going on in October, to get a sense of how you viewed the destination. And as I told many of you during those meetings, that's probably the most critical aspect for us. You live here. It's your town. And with the exception of Orlando and Vegas, you do not build a destination for visitors. You build a destination for yourself. But if you build it smartly, it'll be attractive to visitors. And that's really where we're coming from today, is with our recommendations, is we're not going to say you got to build a big theme park. We're not going to say that you got to redirect the river. We're not going to try and change who Berks County is. The question is how do we make those kinds of tweaks? How do we make those additions to what is already a fabulous product so that visitors become more likely to show up. So with that, the first step was that destination assessment, and your team was the old white guy, or boomer, empty nest, male, Terry, the Gen X female mother, and then Justin, our millennial, who likes to jump out of airplanes, climb rocks, and had a wonderful time, a marvelous time on some of your more challenging bike trails, and didn't tell us until we got back home that he took several spills along the way with the guys who took him out, and he can't wait to come back and do it again. So we come at it from 3 different perspectives, and what we have found over the years in doing these around the country is we all see about 75% the same stuff, but about 25% of what each one of us sees is a little different than the other. And so we think it's a much more well-rounded view from an outsider into the community. So we're not going to go through, I mean, ultimately I think it was, 50 pages or so of findings of what we found. But just to give you the high points, what we found and what you know and probably take for granted is abundant scenic beauty and really stunning architecture. We were taken, granted we were here at the perfect time of the year, leaves were just starting, but still, you have something here that you can't just take for granted. There is a beauty here that we just don't find in other parts of the country, especially those twisty, turny roads. You know, everybody talks about Virginia's Blue Ridge as that ultimate drive you got to take. You've got the same twisty turnies, and frankly, in some cases better than what's on the Blue Ridge. And you need to grab onto that, because as long as we've got gas prices where they are, you know, the American road trip is back, and we expect, if it doesn't get out of hand this summer, we're going to see a lot more road trips by today's consumer. Your architecture, especially the churches, there's something really powerful there for packaging, we believe. There's just a look here, and you've done a very nice job, we believe, and especially in the, as Jerry from H2R calls it, your burgs, especially in the small communities, of maintaining some of that architectural integrity, and that's fabulous. Generally, what we found in wayfinding signage was, it's honestly better than most. It's pretty good intra-municipal, intra-community. Outside, from town to town, you have some serious challenges. There is nothing that propels me from one town to the next. I don't realize as I'm driving that there's another experience just 5, 6, 7 miles down the road. So, and people will often say, you know, in this GPS world, signs aren't important anymore. Well, that's not exactly true, because it wasn't on my radar screen, the Daniel Boone homestead, but I saw a sign for it, so I stopped. I never would have stopped if I hadn't seen the sign. So signage is important, and we, in our recommendations, will encourage you to take another look at your signs. In some cases, in some of your communities, the signs are beautiful and really well done. There are some misses, however. As you come off 422 to find Santander, great sign on 422. Then there's a sign that says turn right. Then there's no more signs. And that's, you got to turn again to find it. Heading to the, it was funny, both Terry and I went to the Railroad Museum on the same day. Sadly, it was Friday, when they're not open. But we both went, but we both came at it, because we're all in our own cars, we both came at it from different directions. She had no trouble finding it whatsoever, and there's some great signs in that community. Really well done, except I don't know whether it got hit by a snowplow or what happened, but there's a sign missing on one direction that you go right past the Railroad Museum, because it's not there. I mean, it's great, 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 and then just like Santander, off you go. So those little misses do not in any way diminish the fact that your signage in community is about the best we've seen around the country. It's just, we believe there's some opportunities to enhance. You've got a diverse array of experiences. I mean, there's something here for everybody. And you know, in our research, one of the toughest things to do is to appeal to all generations. You're good at this or you're good at that, and frankly, there's enough here that you're one of those rare communities that there is something for every generational cohort. Strong outdoor recreational, strong sports assets. You've got unique arts and heritage and cultural attractions, widespread public art. We were very impressed, from the bears in Boyertown to the ants in front of the museum, I mean, there's some great public art, and the art that we were really taken by, all three of us, is your mural art. There is, what, 30 maybe murals just in the central urban core, and there's some great stuff out there, and people more and more are using public art, and in some cases, in some communities, graffiti art as a real calling card. Some of you may have been to Toronto or to Melbourne. Both of them have dedicated a certain section of town, the alleyways, as fair game for graffiti artists, and it's spectacular, and there are hundreds of people in both of those alleys on any given day. We were in Melbourne late last year in a rainstorm, and there were probably, in our 3-block area, I'd say easily 50 people standing in the rain looking at graffiti art, because it is just spectacular. Diverse culinary and retail options. You've been known for a long time as clearly the outlet capital. We were more taken with the retail that we found in the small towns, on the main streets, the antiquing, the boutiquing. There's something there. And, you know, it's funny, I said to many people that I was enjoying the culinary finds that we had stumbled upon around town and around the county, and they kind of cocked their head. And, you know, locals don't view it this way, but what you're going to find when Jerry, and I don't mean to take his thunder, but when Jerry joins us virtually, one of the things that you are rated highest by outsiders is your independent culinary offerings. And so there's something there, and I think that will lead to some of our recommendations as well. And a strong events calendar. Frankly, we couldn't hit all the events and festivals and things that were going on, and even the ones we could hit, we couldn't stay for more than 45 minutes or an hour there. You have a very heavy events calendar that we think that there's some real opportunities. Now, to say that, I mean, we've become big fans. And we don't say that lightly, because frankly, we come into some towns and we can't wait to leave. And when I have to give those reports, I have to preface it, and I'll preface it here too, even though we love you. When you hear a critique from us, think of your community as your favorite pair of jeans, right? You like wearing them, you look good in them, they feel good. You probably are not going to go on a job interview or get married in your favorite pair of jeans, probably. You're probably going to dress up a little bit. That's what we're saying to any destination is, you know something? It's working for you, great. It's your favorite pair of jeans. If you want company, you might have to dress up a little bit. So these are not critiques or criticisms, it's suggestions for just taking it to that next step. And here are some of the issues. As much as you've got great signs in community, that destinational between communities is missing, and we think a huge opportunity for this region to create a standard county-wide look that directs people from city to city, from town to town. You lack sufficient venues to host really large events. The Expo's now, you know, essentially shuttered. The hotels have good space, but not huge space, because the space in a hotel is designed to supply the space for that hotel. So there's a missing piece here for a long-term group strategy to try and bring large events that require meeting space and, to a degree, sports space into the community. Inconsistent hours of operations, and you know, we call out the Railroad Museum as one. You know, what a great facility, what great stuff, and yet they're open Saturday and Sunday for a few hours each day. You know, we ended up going out there on Friday, and Terry went back on Saturday at, I don't know, 10:15, 10:30, whenever they opened. But there was a sign on the door saying, "I'm giving a tour, I'll open up at noon." Now, I totally get that these are, in many cases, volunteer operations, and we're depending upon the people that we can beg, borrow, and steal to staff up. But it's an inconsistent experience that you provide as a community when I see it in the visitor's guide or I see it online, and I go tearing out there because I'm a big train enthusiast and I can't get in. And that's just not them. It's all of your facilities. Nightlife. I can't decide if there's not much nightlife here or it's just really hard to find. Because you talk to some people, because we couldn't find very much. And yet we talk to people, say, "Oh yeah, it's there." Okay, where? And so if it is in fact here, we've got to find a better way to interpret that for the visitor, because you may know where it is, and the Eagle may publish the calendar of events for this weekend, but if I'm a visitor, I'm probably not going to pick up a copy of the Eagle. No offense, but that's not what visitors tend to do. And if I'm researching whether I want to come this weekend or next week online, I'm probably not going to buy a subscription to the paper to get access to that calendar of events. So we've got to find a better way. If nightlife indeed is there, we've got to find a better way to interpret it. And part of that is incomplete online information. We were stumbling upon all kinds of things in this community that we didn't know existed, and it's great that we had the ability to just be tourists, nonstop for 18 hours a day for 4 or 5 days. But there were some misses. We found things at the very end of our trip and went, oh, if I'd only known, because they were closed on Monday and I wanted to go back. So that's kind of on a really top level. That's kind of what we saw and what we think strengths and weaknesses and challenges may be. As I said, we also talked to many of you. We talked to key community stakeholders, leaders in the hospitality industry, people from arts and culture, from heritage, all walks of life. We probably ultimately at the end of the day talked to 75 people to get their sense of just the culture of the community. And here's some of the things we found. One, for people who have been here for a long time, we got a real strong dose of despair and desperation and discouragement. As somebody once said, we've got to get over the fact that the way it used to be will never ever happen again. And it never has in the history of the world. What it was, there's always going to be an evolution. Whether you like the evolution or not isn't the issue. It's going to continue to evolve, and the people who want it to stay the way it was, that's just not going to happen. Some people have become very delusioned. At the same time, people that have not been here very long, we got a real jolt of optimism and determination. That, as one person said in one of our focus groups, he goes, the reason I have moved here and the reason I moved to downtown Reading is I want to make a difference. I want to see change. I want to be able to do this. So you've got these two interesting forces, which is not uncommon in a lot of communities. But I think that there's momentum there. There's an author I would encourage you, if you're into this whole city building and rejuvenation concept. There's an author named Peter Kajiyama. He has a book out called For the Love of Cities. His new book just launched last month called Love Your City. And Peter says that there's this new millennial, 20, 30, maybe 40-ish group of people that he calls co-creators. He says government has gotten to a point today that it's a struggle for government to do those big infrastructure projects that really can turn a city around just because resources are so tight. He says what he's seeing around the country is this generation that never learned that they had to ask permission, just starting to do stuff. Just cool stuff, little pop-up things, little graffiti alleys, little this, little that, arts and culture here, doing a play over here. He says, we got to just say, okay, go. And one of the examples that we shared in our report is, and I was just there earlier this week, Pensacola, Florida. They've done a nice job bringing their downtown back. Their Main Street, Halifax, I was there 10 years ago, and it was just as bleak as you can imagine. And today it's a pretty hot, trendy place. But in this, row of buildings, there's this one big gap right in the middle. It's like knock out a tooth. And it was ugly and icky, but the city couldn't move it. No, it wasn't selling. It's just no one knew what to do with this. It was a weird kind of L-shaped piece of property. And so what the city ultimately did was they said, we're going to buy 4 Airstream trailers and some picnic tables and a couple of palm trees, and we're just going to set it up and we're going to rent those to people who want to do food carts. And we're going to do it temporarily until we find a buyer for the land. But until we find a buyer, we're just going to make it look good, and we're going to put some pop-up food carts. I don't think it's ever going to change. It has become a huge hit, and it brings even more people downtown just because it's such an interesting, there's 6 or 7 different restaurants in this little section of downtown. And it's, part of it is sometimes government has to get out of the way and take a flyer and try, as Crystal said, give it a shot. If it didn't work, sell the Airstreams and move on. In Pensacola's case, it worked. So I think there's also opportunities for inclusion. We picked up a thread in these conversations of a lot of silos, a lot of organizations, a lot of people not talking to each other. I think there's a real opportunity, and I know that in talking with the members of the board, of the Bureau, I think there's a real interest in trying to connect those dots and become more inclusive in this community. There's a realization, I think, in a lot of parts. I mean, some of our conversations, every once in a while there'll be a comment from somebody saying, you know, this is about Berks County, and we've spent all day talking about Reading. But with the exception of some of those comments, everybody pretty much agrees is Reading is the heart, and you got to deal with the heart. I mean, and if the heart is ill, it needs to be fixed. Otherwise, the extremities are going to struggle. And the rest of the county will rise and fall with what happens with the city of Reading. And so I think that there was, in fact, it was interesting, somebody who is, you know, has got a business significantly outside of town. And he said, he goes, it's about the city. He says, you know, well, I'll tell you, it's Maple Grove. Maple Grove says, I need the city to be happening because I don't have my fans all day. I need for them to have a place to go tonight. And it's not going to be here. And he goes, and I want them to have that complete experience. And he said, he goes, that's job one. And, you know, I thought it was fascinating. You have a strong amount, and it's well placed. You have a great amount of pride in your local outdoor assets. And I think that you should. And I think part of our recommendation to move into outdoor recreation as one of your new niches is based on the fact that you believe it to be the niche. We believe it to be as well, and we have some other reasons. It's not just because you like it. We think there's some compelling reasons, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And I think that we also picked up a pretty good realism that a lot of communities out there are saying, we want to be in the sports tournament business because that's the most lucrative and it's the fastest growing. And you see bureaus all over just falling all over themselves trying to get into the sports market. And you've got great sports tournaments too, but your calendar's kind of full. So the question is how much more resources do you put into sports tournaments in trying to get them here when you've only got a couple of weekends on the calendar that are available? And so it really comes down to if sports is where you want to be and you want to compete in that very competitive market, then it's going to be a question of do you build additional tournament grade sports facilities, indoor and outdoor, to make that happen. So that's what we picked up from stakeholders. Now what I want to do is turn you over to our consumer research partners. H2R is a firm out of Springfield, Missouri that are very, very well entrenched with the tourism industry. I'll let Jerry give you a quick synopsis of their abilities and what they've been doing over the past 20-some years of researching consumer interests when it comes to hospitality and tourism. But we turn to them to touch the consumer and find out what the consumer's thinking about Greater Reading, what meeting planners think, what sports planners think, and what motor coach planners think. So with the fingers crossed and hoping that the technology works, I'm going to flip you over now to Jerry and the team at H2R.
Good afternoon.
All right.
And just a little bit of applause there.
It's magic.
Thank you for inviting us to join you virtually today. I have with me Ashley Barut and Jill Maurus. Ashley is our Senior Insight Specialist. Jill's our Senior VP in charge of Client Relations. And my name is Jerry Henry. I am the President of H2R. And like Bill, I've been fortunate to be doing this for about 30 years of my life. Bill probably a little bit less than that. Right, Bill?
Just a little.
H2R is a company that I've had for about 10 years. I worked in travel and tourism research my entire life and got into this about 10 years ago. We are a company that specializes in travel and tourism. The vast majority of our customers are destination marketing organizations similar to yourself. And we have a half dozen or so state travel offices as well. We specialize in only 4 types of research, of which brand perception studies, brand health, is one of the foremost. We also do voice of the customer research, ongoing satisfaction, concept evaluation research, and a few others. But our focus today is on brand perception and specifically Reading's brand perception. And so with no further ado, I'm going to jump. I say I'm going to jump. I'm going to control here, and we're moving. Okay. So the purpose of our study was to provide a deeper understanding of how the greater Reading, Berks County area is being perceived by regional travelers, and also to serve as a baseline for which future measurements can use this as context. The way we do this, we use a professionally managed consumer panel of customers, residents that live within a few hundred miles of the Reading, Berks County area. And this panel is rebalanced so that it matches the consumers, the general residents in that area. And then we use screener questions to make sure that we were talking to people who travel for leisure, those that will actually take getaway weekends, and those that were familiar with the greater Reading area. If they don't travel for leisure, then we excluded them. And or if they've never heard of the greater Reading area, well, we wondered what was wrong with them, but be that as it may, if they hadn't heard of it, we didn't either. We used a very large sample for this study of 822 leisure travelers, which is very robust by comparison. And that's what we've drawn our results from. So in our analysis today, we broke it down into like 6 snackable bites, if you will, or 6 sections. We're going to talk about brand health, and within that we'll look at traveler preferences, familiarity and visitation of destinations like Reading and throughout your area, consumer opinion of those destinations, intent to visit, ad awareness, and a variety of things. We're also going to look at the greater Reading, Berks County area brand perception, what people think of the greater Reading area. We're also going to look a little bit at what visitors say, how they behave and what their preferences are, as well as what are the barriers to visitation, why those non-visitors are not coming to Reading. And then we'll end up with a short summary and some recommendations. Now, jump right into brand health. First thing we started asking travelers is what are you looking for in getaway weekend destinations or places that you like to travel for leisure? And it probably comes as no surprise to anyone in the audience that feeling of safety and security, affordability are 2 of the top things that people find extremely desirable. Likewise, having a relaxing place to unwind, a variety of things to see and do, someplace that's easy to get to, are also all very important to travelers today. When it comes to destination experiences, they're looking for a variety of local restaurants with good food, good atmosphere, some local charm. They're looking for historic places that have meaning, where something real happened. They're looking for state and national parks, a place that has a variety of different festivals and events going on throughout the year that keeps the experience fresh at all times of all different seasons. We also asked folks about their familiarity with destinations, and in an unaided question, the usual suspects came up: DC, New York City, Philadelphia, a wide variety. In terms of aided familiarity, we found that 81% said that they were indeed familiar with the greater Reading, Pennsylvania area. That's actually a little lower than some other destinations that we included in the comp set. Hershey and Harrisburg, as we might expect, in Lancaster, were closer to the top. Then Syracuse, Allentown, Roanoke, and then came the Reading area, which beat Hagerstown, Maryland. So familiarity is a bit of an issue there. When we ask about past visitation, we find that really the visitation of the greater Reading area is comparable to Allentown, Hagerstown, and really comparable to both Roanoke and even to Syracuse to some extent. But if you look at the 2 different colors there, the dark blue at the 23% are folks that have visited the area more than 2 years ago. And that's where the base is really coming from, and that's where the greater Reading area is holding its own. But the ones that have come in the last couple of years drops down to 10%. Reading of this comp set is actually lower than some of the other destinations visited in the area. Ask, what are your opinion of these destinations? Reading is solid at 43%, which is within statistical error of Allentown and Hagerstown. But at the same token, it's somewhat on the lower end of the comp set. We kind of expect places like Hershey and Harrisburg and Lancaster to be up higher, but even among the Roanoke, Syracuse, Allentown destinations, we're a little on the low side in terms of positive opinion. Now, visitors, we always ask a net promoter score, and that's just a fancy way of asking people how likely are you to recommend this. I say fancy in that it's got its own special little scale from 0 to 10, and it's called a net promoter because we take the ratio of people that rate their intent to recommend at a 9 or 10, they're definitely going to recommend you. And we subtract out those that rate their intent to recommend at only a 0 through a 6 to get a net. This is something that's used across industries. If you Google it, you'll see it everywhere. We're starting to use it in travel and tourism. And when we ask this of Reading's visitors, we find that you get a 25% net promoter score, which is just right about our 27% norm. So pretty normal. Actually, you have a very strong ratio of brand promoters. The 52% is stronger than we typically see. Usually that's in the mid-40s. So among visitors, you've got a lot of brand promoters. The only reason the net promoter score is just slightly lower than the norm is that you also have a few more detractors than we typically see. Normally that's around 20%, and then 27%, you've got a few more detractors. So the reality is you've got people on both ends of the extremes, the polar opposites, those that really love you and are recommending you, but you also have more of those that are detracting. You put that all together, and the Reading area falls somewhere in the middle of the pack of the competitive set. Looking forward, taking a look out that front windshield, are they going to be coming in the future though? We tend to see results that line up fairly similar to opinion, in that the intent to visit Reading is a little bit lower than we're seeing in some of these other destinations. Ask about, have you seen any ads for any of these destinations? None were particularly high, except for Hershey and Harrisburg. But it's a little concerning that the greater Reading area was actually toward the lowest at 9%. So we don't have extremely strong intent to visit, and part of that is they don't have great high level of consideration, and part of that's because they don't recall seeing the ads. We do have some differentiators, though, that make Reading stand out, and some of the biggest are the variety of local restaurants, the affordability and the value perception of the area, along with natural scenic beauty and a variety of things to see or do. These are things that make Reading stand out and are things that people readily attribute to the greater Reading area. The challenge with that particular set is that they're tough to own, because a lot of the destinations in your area have customers and travelers saying similar things about them. So that poses a little bit of a hurdle. Getting further into the brand perception, we use what we call a brand persona, and I'm not going to read that to you, but for the most part, the people that when you're talking and you're marketing to would be folks like Stephanie and Juanita here. These are high school friends, knew each other for 2 years. They lived in the area at one time. Both of them now live in Philadelphia. Stephanie lives right downtown Philly. Juanita's a little bit out in the suburbs. Stephanie's married to Bob. She's got 2 kids, and she's very into education for her kids. She loves for them to have fun, but really wants them to get education at the same time. They like to visit Reading because it gives them a little bit of an opportunity to escape. They get the kids away from the iPads and the video games and the cell phones, and they can get them outdoors. And that's what Stephanie loves about coming home to the Reading area. Juanita is also married, but she doesn't have kids yet. She's married to Kevin. Again, they're friends from school. And she tends to go back to Reading more to see old friends and family that's still in the area. And as you're designing ads and what have you, these are the customer types that we're thinking you probably ought to keep in mind. We get that from a variety of the questions that are following. One is asking folks who are familiar with familiar with the greater Reading area and Berks County, asking them, how would you describe this area to a friend or a family member that wasn't familiar? And the descriptions that were provided in their own words, no aided anything, were almost universally positive. The people that visited told us that there's great shopping, there's friendly people there, there's great scenic beauty, it's a relaxing place to visit. The brand among those that visit is very positive. They associate you with things like being historic, easily accessible, scenic beauty, and affordable for the most part. But frankly, all of these earn fairly high scores. As a brand persona, or what I might call a muse, and on these we did not include any words, no icons. We only showed visual images and said when you think of Reading, when you think of the greater Reading, Berks County area, if it were a person, which of these would you most likely see it as? And probably not surprising by this point, they chose somebody enjoying outdoor recreation, and second most of a blue-collar worker, and third of a single mom. Diving a little deeper into what visitors of the greater Reading, Berks County area said, they tell us that the primary reason that they visited the last time they were there was for a getaway weekend or to visit family and friends. To some extent, the third one would be a recreational day trip. Those are the primary reasons they come, but that's not necessarily what gets them up off the sofa. We also asked some more emotional-oriented things to find out, yeah, but what's causing you to want to take this trip? What was it that motivated you to get up off the sofa? And the top two things that motivated Reading visitors to get up off the sofa was an activity that everyone in their family or everyone in their household could do together, or it provided that opportunity to unplug from technology and enjoy a bit of nature. And that's the one that actually stood out the most against folks who had visited other destinations most recently. That's what that orange line is, or those are visitors to area competitors. And so this unplugging and escaping is a differentiator of sorts of certainly what motivates people to come to the Reading area. When you look at overnight visitation and where they stayed, largely you look similar to your competitors. There's not a huge difference there. When you look at what activities that they do when they come to the area, probably no surprises here. For the most part, it's outlet shopping, unique local restaurants. They'll do the public museum, downtown rotates, hiking and biking trails. More importantly than the activities they participated in, of those that told us they participated in each activity, we followed up and asked, well, which of this set of activities that you participated in were really one of the primary reasons that you visited? And again, it was shopping, local restaurants, and in this case, downtown routines. Three biggest functional drivers for visiting the greater Reading, Berks County area. And this, I think, is something to be very proud of, and it's your level of satisfaction. We ask it across a wide variety of attributes, and straight across the board, in every metric we evaluated, Reading beat the competitive set as a whole. And more importantly, every metric was rated at about a 3.9 or higher. The people who visit the greater Reading, Berks County area are greatly satisfied when they leave. They have a good experience and they rate their satisfaction comparatively high. The highest ratings go for natural scenic beauty, accessibility, easy to get to, affordability, doesn't break the bank, and easy wayfinding at least to get to the area. Now, taking what they told us in terms of satisfaction, what you do well, we compared that back to one of the first questions we had asked, what's most important to you? And the purpose of this is to try to plot it to find out what are your brand's strengths and what, if any, unmet needs do you have. We did that, we found that the feeling of safety and security is actually a strength of the greater Reading area. That a relaxing place to unwind is a strength. Again, remember, a lot of these people are coming out of Philadelphia. You're an easy destination to get to. You're accessible, not too hard, and have great natural scenic beauty. Those are the things that you earned above average satisfaction and that were also considered of above average importance to travelers. But you also had a few things that were of above average importance to travelers that were below average in satisfaction. That doesn't mean it's bad satisfaction. As I said, all of your metrics look pretty good. But from 0 to the lowest to the highest, there's a midpoint. And so of those that fell in the bottom half would be a consistent product experience, affordability, and variety of things to see and do. Again, not that you got bad scores on affordability and variety. You didn't. Those were very good. But there are also things that have a very high threshold. People are expecting this more and more when they travel. Barriers to visitation. Why aren't people coming? Well, before anything, we just ask. We ask an open-ended question, why haven't you visited the greater Reading-Berks County area? And what we found is most of the responses fell into one of three buckets. The first is, I just don't know enough about it. I don't know what there is to do there. Another is, I know what there is to do there, but I can do that at home, or I can do it some other place that I'm visiting. So there's not enough differentiation that makes me need to drive to the greater Reading area to do it. And the other is, I'm in a habit. I like visiting these other places. I tend to go back there every time. They meet my needs, and so I'm doing that. And I see no particular reason that I need to go to the greater Reading. Okay. In addition to that, because we've been to this road a few times, we have a pretty good idea of what primary hurdles among travelers are. We also ask them to react to a set of possible explanations in terms of, do you agree or do you disagree with these hurdles? And frankly, we found similar things. I have other places I prefer to visit. I'm in a habit of going to these places. They're serving my needs. I'm pretty happy. I don't have family or friends in the area. Remember, visit family and friends is very high in the primary purpose of visiting the area. I have not had anyone recommended to me recently. Whoa, there's one that social media can help. And that human beings today very seldom go to a destination that they haven't researched, heard about, learned about, or had a friend tell them about. And so not having a friend tell them about it, recommend it, go on and on about it, is actually a reason to not visit the Reading area. I don't know what there is to do. Well, there's a problem. There's a lack of awareness and comprehension that it's hard to make a decision to visit if you can't envision what you would do with your spouse, with your kids, with friends if you were to visit. And then lastly, I just simply don't know enough about the area to make an informed decision. Most of these all add up to a lack of information, a lack of awareness, a lack of comprehension. I should also point out that occasionally on these questions, we find that people don't always know exactly why they do what they do or why they don't do it. And so additionally, we run correlation on each of these with intent to visit that's asked in a different part of the survey. And frequently we'll hear, whoa, it's way too expensive, or I'm way too busy, or some explanations or excuses like that. But in Reading's case, and the reason I'm not even showing those is the reasons they gave us were pretty much the exact reasons that we found out correlated back to whether they were going to visit or not. And so you lined up pretty well with what they told us. We did follow that up with what, if anything, would motivate or inspire you to visit the greater Reading-Berks County area in the future for a weekend getaway or a leisure trip. And again, of their responses, they tended to fall in one of three different buckets. One was simply more advertising. I need to hear it more often. I need to learn more about it. Just get more advertising out there, then I'd be more likely to come. Another was give me a deal. Put a package together, offer me a discount, give me a deal of some sort, and then I'd be more likely to visit. And certainly we know of young moms, especially in the group on age, some won't even consider going to a destination if they don't have a deal on it. It's not surprising to me that that popped up. The third one, though, is more or better or different activities of some sort. That is, having things to do there that I not only know about, but that I want to do and would cause me to drive. So those are things that would inspire me to visit. Know more about it, advertising, a better deal, or better activities or attractions to visit, or at least different. So quick summary, in urban health, we have somewhat low familiarity and low consideration, which is a clear hurdle to future leisure growth, as is the lowest level of assisted advertising awareness in our competitive set. You do have differentiators. Great local restaurants, affordability, variety, scenic beauty, all things that make you who you are, make you a fabulous destination to visit, but they are tough to own. And that then makes them less of a competitive advantage than you might like. The people that visit, though, for the most part, think you're a great destination. They describe you with warm, glowing terms, that you're a relaxing getaway with friendly people and great shopping nestled in scenic beauty. They associate you with being accessible, historic, affordable, authentic, all positive. We even had another one that goes on that they would also further associate with specific things like fresh air, American history, and the birds. The level of past visitation to Reading, actually, if you go to any time and visit it, is pretty similar to other destinations your size in the area. But when you look at the visitation in the last few years, it starts getting a little bit small. That's an area of concern. It's an area of concern because also when you look out the front windshield, the ratio of those telling us that they're going to visit in the future is also on the low end. The people that do visit, they'll come for leisure getaways. They'll come for a weekend away to visit friends, relatives, or take a recreational day trip. So you've got folks that are visiting, the folks that visit love you, but you're somewhat of a best kept secret. The strongest motivators, the people that do visit the greater Reading area, what's getting them off the sofa, is they want to do things together. They want to create memories together, and they want to escape and unplug and get outdoors and get away from jobs and technology and what have you. Barriers to visitation, for the most part, is they just simply don't know enough about it. There's no other way to put it. They're going to other destinations, as you probably expect, and they've got in the habit of doing it. And to break that habit, we're going to have to give them a good reason to change their normal patterns. It's also that they have no friends or family living in the area that would spawn the visiting friends and relatives, or they haven't got a personal recommendation. That you can work on pretty easily and fairly inexpensive. In the end, they don't have enough information to make an informed decision. That will help craft comprehension and increase interest. Shoppers indicated they would be more likely to visit if they saw more ads, they had some deals, or there were different activities that might make it appealing to them. Interestingly, of all of this thing, the only time we brought up safety and security was in one of our first slides where we said, that's what people are expecting. That's what they want. People don't go to a place that they feel unsafe. It's a non-negotiable. I want safety and security. And I'm not saying that safety and security is not at all an issue, but it's certainly not among the top tier issues that people raised as a barrier to visiting the Reading area. Perhaps they need greater comprehension for that to surface, but there are many other issues that are challenges for you before we get down to safety and security. I will say that the Reading area has no more of a brand image problem than really any of its direct competitors in the area. You're still, to some extent, a blank canvas whose picture is yet to be fully revealed, and that is an advantage and an opportunity for you. The fact that you don't have great familiarity gives you an opportunity to get the plan together and go out and tell them what they need to think, know, see, believe in about the Reading area. You still have that opportunity. However, improving that situation and growing visitation will inherently require an investment in both marketing and product. You're not going to be able to keep doing the same things and expect that you're going to get different results. That is, if change is desired, to some extent, change is going to be required. So a few of our recommendations, which I think blend fairly well with Bill, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but one is the need for a differentiator. You have several that make you a great place to visit, but you don't have one clear thing that people, when they think of the greater Reading area, that they think of that, and it's a compelling reason to visit you over other destinations. It's got to be something that's relevant, compelling, and that you have a legitimate right to claim. The other one's advertise more. That's easy for me to say. And it takes money to advertise, and money is typically not growing on trees for any destination in America. So the fact is, comparatively few travelers in the region really have a great comprehension of what the greater Reading area, the Berks County area, cap it off, it's going to be difficult to generate meaningful growth if you don't have that additional investment in marketing. But some of it doesn't necessarily have to be paid media. You have a good core of people who love you. That 52% are out there recommending you. And so a comparatively inexpensive channel to use today is social media. It's not just setting up a Facebook site and going and chasing likes, but actually working it. There's nothing wrong with chasing likes. That's very nice. But the key to making the brand advocacy work in social media is developing content that is compelling, that is relevant, that is differentiated, and getting your customers to share that in their own social media network so that it greatly amplifies the Reading experience across all of their connections. And then lastly is product development. The greater Reading, Berks County area has a wide variety of quality travel experiences. You have the outlet malls, you've got festivals, events, outdoor recreation, professional sports. You are a fabulous destination, as Will said. These are all good, they provide a foundation of the experience, but consumers tend to chase the brightest, the shiniest, the newest toy or destination. Developing, whether that's content in a festival or a new attraction, or even advertising new additions to current attractions in the marketing efforts will give people a new reason to visit the area. It'll help build comprehension and give them market buzz, something to talk about with regard to Reading. And the more market buzz that you can build, the better off that you are. Guest experience retention is the new acquisition. It's one of my favorite statements these days. Is with social media, if you please the customers that are coming, they're going to tell other people. If you do not please the customers that are coming, they're going to tell other people. Normally, that's a discussion reserved for specific hotels, specific attractions, specific restaurants. But frankly, as destination marketing organizations are starting to accept greater responsibility and leadership for the destination's overall well-being, that visitor experience is becoming your issue as well. It's a relevant area of concern. So every effort should be made to ensure that everybody that visits the greater Reading, Berks County area leaves not only happy, but elated and willing to talk about it and tell other people. And lastly is brand alignment. Bill talked a little bit about the same idea, only he says it far more eloquently than I do. But the idea is a lot of your own marketing materials look fairly similar and are fairly well branded, but I think you have an opportunity across not just the wayfinding in the area, but perhaps across other branches of government, other organizations throughout town to have the same branding look and template that will help have people immediately recognize this is Reading. So when they go back home and they see it on an ad or what have you, it has a bigger impact on them. And that is the end of our section. Bill?
Thank you, Jerry. Any questions before we let Jerry and his team go? Anything that popped out that you didn't see? Yes.
So am I right in saying that the groups that were surveyed are outside? No one from the local community was surveyed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So one question that I have that ties into your recommendation about perceived safety and also that larger thing about, we have to market ourselves first, is that perception of the safety of the city of Reading is coming from the local community that lives here. So if those people weren't surveyed, it's not going to show that in this recommendation. So I just want to make that distinction that is still, I think, a huge barrier for us because it's our own people that believe that. It's the people that live here. And if we keep sending that message out to our loved ones, I'm going to come and visit me, but I'm not going to take you downtown, I think that is a huge message that we're missing.
Our own worst enemies.
Yes.
Yeah. Jerry, thoughts? Did you hear that?
I totally agree.
Okay.
One thing I would say is that if there is a particular area of town that that travelers like to visit, that you do have a safety issue in, the step one would be to ensure a police presence and to make sure that there are no issues in that area so they don't have stories to take home. But from what we got out of the data, it's not even in the upper half, or certainly not among your primary concerns. It ranks much lower. So the perception that safety is an issue, while very near and dear of a concern locally, is not necessarily the biggest hurdle for people that live a couple hundred miles away. There's a lot bigger hurdles that you've got to address before you actually get that out.
Yes. Well, I'd follow up on that. In terms of how the perception about local perception, I'm not sure is in line with what's really happening. And it's possible that people believe we're coloring our message to the outside. I'm wondering how much emphasis you feel we should do with addressing this. The data tells us that the perception of safety in the city of Reading is not a barrier to people coming down to Reading. But we keep repeating the fact that it is as part of the narrative in spite of the data, and what do we do about that? Because Elton John sold out in like 6 hours. The Trans-Siberian Orchestra might sold out 2 concerts that afternoon. It was not young males from south of Penn Street packing the Trans-Siberian Orchestra concert. So we keep repeating that narrative that it's a problem. It's not a problem, but it's becoming a problem because we're repeating the narrative.
Jerry?
I think community education, I think it'd be one thing. It starts with this type of research, but I think it's probably town hall meetings, or maybe it's bringing somebody in that does, we talked about retention is the new acquisition. It may be training frontline employees and reminding them that they really are the gateway to the customer. So they're the only ones impacting the customers up front. And while doing those meetings, reminding business owners and travel constituents, and just frankly general business in the area, that the more crime and safety is part of our narrative, the more that residents are then going to tell guests that visit them that that's a problem. If you change your narrative, you'll change your situation. That is, change the narrative and say, crime's not a huge problem with that. Travelers love us and they don't see it as an issue. We just have to make sure we give them the best service, the best experience, so they go back to talking about how wonderful it is. And right now, your travelers aren't. I think it's just making sure that the businesses in the area that come in contact with customers are starting to change that narrative.
Okay. One last question.
Kind of along those lines, has there been any thought given to partnering with other countywide organizations like the Chamber or GREP as far as getting the word out? Because part of the problem we just heard is no one knows what there is to do in Reading, just the image of Reading. So has there been any discussion as far as how to cross-promote? Because those 2 organizations, for example, just touch a lot of people. They have a great footprint in the county and beyond. And if there's a way that the 3 could work together to cross-promote, to show all the great things that are here, that are available to do.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and just for your information, this is a little bit cart before the horse because we're sharing these analyses and recommendations with you a day before the board considers them. And that's actually a conversation that we will have with the board tomorrow, is how do we elevate and amplify these messages. So I don't mean to dodge the question. I think you're on the right track, and I think there are those opportunities. Okay? All right, Jerry, thank you so much. Great work as always. Wish you were here in person.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Bill.
All right, thank you. And just to amplify a little bit more on that point about how we communicate and how we change, as Jerry said, the narrative. A couple of things come to mind. One, easier said than done because our local media outlets, it's about the news, and people are drawn to bad news, and we all know how that works. But maybe there's a way to sit down with local media and say, hey, show them the data and say, we may be overstating to ourselves and we're creating this narrative. The other side of the coin, to Jerry's point, I think there is something to be said for a much more aggressive utilization of social media. We've been watching Rockford, Illinois for the past 10, 15 years, and Rockford was I felt so sorry for them. I mean, every year Money Magazine, does their best place to live or is it Inc., whoever it is, does the best place to live. And they never give the same city number one. They always mix it up. Even if the numbers came out number one, they wouldn't do it. But they hit Rockford as the worst place to live twice in a row. And so Rockford has had a challenge, and their downtown has been tough. And what we're watching the Bureau do is really change that narrative through social media, that they are every single day. I mean, they've got their tourism Facebook page, but there's also another page that it's from the Bureau, but it's not really tourism. It's saying, hey, great selection on the new school superintendent. This is going to be fabulous. Hey, did you see what they did with that old burnt out building? It's going to be something new. And they're every single day talking about what a great place this is to live, not what a great place this is to visit. And I wonder if that maybe a combination of those two strategies isn't something that we can begin to work towards to begin to change that narrative. So, yeah.
Dedicated cheerleader.
Yes.
Dedicated cheerleader.
Yeah.
On 24/7.
Mm-hmm. Yep. A dedicated cheerleader and a choreographer of other cheerleaders, so that we all, we see that post and we share it, and we share it, and we share it. So, Jerry focused on the leisure. Let me give you a real quick snapshot of our group, the meeting planners, sports planners, and motor coach operators. Very quickly show you just some of the things we found here. Key findings, very low comparatively. Familiarity with group planners. Greater Reading at 52%. We're aware that they could bring meetings and tournaments here, as opposed to some of your competitors up in the 70s. We also have limited past booking of the destination. Once again, we have 3% of the planners that we talk to across all levels have said they have brought business here, but as you can see, all of them more than 2 years ago. So nobody in the set of, I think it was 126 planners, said that they've been here in the past 2 years. As you can see, the competition, obviously a lot more, and a lot more in the past 24 months. And as with low intent to visit, low intent to book the destination, Greater Reading at only 14% of planners said they would consider bringing new group business into the community. So, which will come back around with our recommendations. So let's do the recommendations. This is the fun part. Well, I think it's the fun part. Crystal's just not sure about this. As I said at the outset, and this is something that I know there was an expectation that we were going to come in and we were going to say, you know what you got to do? You got to build a fill in the blank. As much as we have grown to know you and we think we understand you pretty well, we still don't know you well enough to say, you know what you need to do? You need to go out and build some sort of a Taj Mahal. I think it's enhancements. For the most part, you have the assets. It's how do you connect the dots and how do you make them better? So here's our thoughts. Uniform destination wayfinding signage. We are not in any way encouraging the communities that have done wayfinding within their boundaries to change up. There's some really, really great examples. And I got to tell you, we work with a lot of communities that are trying to make headway into the outdoor recreation space. And I can't remember anywhere else, and I'm sure we've seen it somewhere, but boy, very few destinations. They'll do okay with trailhead signage, and they'll do okay with signs on the trail, but signs on the road to get you to the trailhead, I mean, it seems counterintuitive, but we rarely see that. Yours in Berks County, sensational. So again, we're not saying change the signage, we're saying add to the signage with something that's uniform. We think a better interpretation and expansion of public art, you've got something going on here with your public art, and there's got to be a way to encourage private sector, public sector, that any new project or any rehabilitated project coming online, encourage them. Maybe there's even an incentive program in some ways, and I know in some communities they'll do that. I know when we were utilizing some state funds for our convention center in Madison, Wisconsin, we had to set aside, I think, 2% of the total budget for public art. So are there programs we can take advantage of to do that? And I think part of it is also the interpretation. There is a website out there that kind of chronicles your mural art, but if you weren't digging for it, it'd be hard to find. And I think that there's some serious opportunities to interpret some sort of a mural trail through the region. Clearly, we talked about this before, expanding the hours of operation for both retail and heritage and museums. Easier said than done, but nothing, it turns off and colors a visitor's perception of a destination than, you know, driving 15, 20, 30 minutes because they really want to see, you know, a museum or an attraction. And, you know, I told you I stumbled upon Daniel Boone. I sadly stumbled upon Daniel Boone on the day that the person who was supposed to do the house tours didn't show. So I couldn't even get into the house. And so, and you know, hey, I'm sure whoever it was had a good reason. They got sick, had a child care issue. I'm sure it worked, but it's just, so, you know, could I tweet about it? Could I Facebook about it? Could I tell my friends about it? No, because the hours, and, you know, it was, and the guy who was there said, I'd love to. And he goes, there's nobody around. He goes, but I'm the only one here, and I got to watch the gift shop. I get that. You know, so just because I understand it doesn't mean that we don't need to put it on our list for things we got to figure out how to do. Expand and enhance the trails and trailhead signage. You've got some sections of trails that are fabulous. If you can connect them, that's one more step. I mean, as Jerry said, trails and outdoor rec is a hard one to be a differentiator, but not if you've got, you know, 48 contiguous miles. So, you know, we heard from a number of you that, you know, a kind of a frustration that you've not been able to complete the trail through downtown Reading. You know, that would be key, and it would give people such an ability to experience nature, especially for those that are novice and want to try to do it, but they don't quite know how to get their hands on it, don't want to be too far afield from civilization, is to be able to try the trail there first and then begin as they get their legs. The other thing I think that we have some opportunity is good trail signage, but enhancements along the way would be great. Along that outdoor rec thing, we do believe there is an absence of a critical mass of outfitters and guides. There's a lot of people who want to try this stuff, but they're not about to bring their own gear, or they wouldn't know where to start, and they're a little nervous, and they need somebody to help them. I think that there's got to be a way to encourage those either units of government or private sector lands as close as possible to the trailheads and to the access points for things like rivers, to make that land available for and encourage people to do guides and outfitters. The whole sports thing is a question that I think you have to ask the residents of this community. And I'm going to give you an example from Rockford, Illinois again. Rockford's been, there's going to be a day where somebody's going to write a book about that town, and maybe it's going to be me, because they've really gone from, they're not first yet, but they were worst, and they're moving the needles a lot. And one of the ways they moved the needle was the local community was clamoring for a new soccer complex. They had 16 fields. The community said it's not enough. My kids can't get on more than twice a month. We need more fields. So Park District had the land, but they said, there's no way. We are at the edge of our cap on property tax. We don't have the money. We just can't do it. The Bureau stepped in and said, tell you what, let's make a deal with the community. You guys really want these fields? You can have them Monday through Thursday, but you can't have them on the weekends. We got them on the weekends for tournaments. And they ran the numbers and said, if we can have 13 major tournaments, we'll be able to generate enough cash from parking, concessions, and tournament fees that we'll be able to pay for the maintenance every single year. Sure enough, they've been within $10,000 of revenue neutral every year since they opened. So my point is that I think it has to be that kind of a connection. Don't build more sports complexes if they're not going to be used Monday through Thursday. But if there's a need, how then does the tournament aspect on weekends help pay for something for residents for Monday through Thursday? If there is that pent-up need, I think we go down that path. And if I was going to give you a suggestion one way or the other, it would be an indoor facility rather than an outdoor facility. Of course, that's coming from me as somebody from the hospitality industry, because frankly, Your weekends in the summer here, you're doing pretty good. Occupancy's not bad. And you got a lot of events and festivals and things going on. It's January, February, March, April, where hotels and hospitality businesses need that business on the weekends. So it's a perfect marriage in our mind, that if you're going to do sports, why do summer? Everybody's chasing summer. Not many people are chasing winter. And so we would say an indoor facility would make more sense if you went down that path. And finally, on the enhancements to the destination, we would encourage that the community find a path to assist Maple Grove in the upgrades that they need. It was fascinating, and this isn't even coming from the folks at Maple Grove. I was talking to a hotelier, and he said, this isn't about rooms. He goes, most race weekends, we'd fill anyway. It's not that huge. He says, do you realize that one of the racing teams, one of the teams, and I think at the Nationals there's probably 12, he goes, one team alone catered 2,500 meals during that weekend, all sourced locally. We don't think of the fact that we lose the Nationals because the NHRA decides that the track isn't up to a certain standard. It's not just hotel rooms. You're losing an amazing amount of revenue that flows through this community. And so, you know, we've supported other facilities like baseball stadiums, which is fabulous, and congratulations, great stadium. But that doesn't generate the kind of visitor spending that the track does, just saying, okay? So those are some of our thoughts on destination enhancements. Now, to the crux of why we really were engaged. Crystal said, look, we've got a diminishing amount of revenues. We cannot be everything to everybody. Help us focus. If we're gonna focus our marketing message, where are the high value consumers? Where's the most fertile spot for us to move? We used to be about outlet malls. We rode that pony. It was a good pony. Okay, what's the new pony? And so that's where we go here. And so what we've got is we've got two philosophical changes we will recommend to the board tomorrow in the way the Bureau operates, and 5.5 potential niche markets that we think hold some significant promise, okay? Here's philosophical one. We're recommending that the Bureau change from a sales-focused operation to a services-focused operation. And what we mean by that is the Bureau is currently investing an awful lot of money in going out and beating the weeds for meetings, sports tournaments, motor coach, going to trade shows, advertising in publications, doing all this effort to try to bring large groups into town. Well, you've lost your large meeting facility, and your sports facilities are relatively full at this point in time. There's not a lot of place to put these people, and what we find is over the years, fewer and fewer successes in this market are happening, and you see that, you know, only a handful of people say they have any intent whatsoever to book a group into this region, and only half are even aware that we're here. So here's the thing, from a philosophical standpoint, one of the things that we look at when we look at a destination, and it changes a lot when you've got a convention center. And while Santander is a large space, it's truly not a convention center. It's really not designed for that. So the problem is the kinds of business that Crystal's team is pursuing is exactly the same clients and business that the hotels are pursuing. They're calling on the same people. They're calling on the same customers, which is, we believe, an overlap, and it's a waste. What we believe is also kind of happening is the sales process for everybody, not just for meetings and conventions, but for everybody, is changing so that the client really doesn't, they do all their research without us. You know, I mean, we can be pursuing, we can be chasing all we want, but they really don't want to talk to us until they get to that point about 80% into the sales funnel where they need help. They need either to negotiate a rate, or they need to get the right dates, or they need something. And then they pop up and there they are. We believe that's where the Bureau can be of the most impact, is have our facilities, our hotels continue to pursue, but be attached at the hip with them to say the minute there's an issue, the Bureau steps into action, and we're the closer, we're the fixer, we're the facilitator, we're the services that make it all happen. any event of real size is going to pick us. They're not going to be sold to come here. They're going to be interested in us because we got something they want. The Bureau should be the fixer when it comes to that. So what we believe is, roughly what, $70-some thousand, not counting salaries, was being put into the group market. We believe that 56,000 of that can be redeployed back into marketing and PR and social media. I think we'll have a much bigger impact in ROI by doing that, by moving out of the sales position into a services position. So that's philosophical change number one. Philosophical change number two is going from a marketing organization to more of a storytelling organization. And a lot of this does come down into social media. Paid marketing is increasingly suspect. The internet search is the culprit. People can find their way around anything. The opportunity exists, I believe, and what we're seeing around the country is destination marketing organizations like yours are moving into what is called content curator. That's our role. Is regardless of whether it's hospitality, whether it's just quality of life, somebody has to be, to your point, the designated cheerleader and has to know everything about everything. The source of all information for the community should be the CVB. Now, having said that, that kind of flies in the face of membership. Membership bureaus are roughly 50% of American CVBs have a membership component, which was great in the 80s and 90s because any business that wanted to tap into the visitor economy, they don't have enough money or resources to advertise in newspapers and television and radio and but the Bureau's doing that. So I'm going to get my ad in the visitor's guide, or in later years, of course, it was the internet. But now with the internet, people can go around us. We're becoming irrelevant if we're membership, because what was an inclusionary model is now becoming exclusionary. And we found in a couple of situations where we stumbled upon things that we really thought were fabulous, but they weren't members, so they weren't in the visitor's guide and they weren't on the website. Now, this is easier said than done as well, because this is $100,000 of revenue to the Bureau's bottom line. Okay? You just say everybody gets listed for free, that $100,000 disappears. Now you have even less revenue. You may be telling a better story, but you have less revenue to do it with. So this is going to be one of those philosophical questions that the board and I tomorrow in strategic planning will be going deep on, because there is no right answer here. I know what the customer wants, but can you continue to run an operation if you lose $100,000? And there are some ways we can mitigate that, and we're going to talk about whether or not we believe this community can mitigate that potential loss. In some cases, and I'll tell you, Salt Lake City dropped their membership program. They're actually generating more revenue from those same partners today than they were then, because they've changed it from a membership program to a marketing co-op program. So it's really essentially the businesses are paying for enhanced and increased visibility. They're paying for first in search. They're paying for visibility. Maybe we can find the same kind of success as Salt Lake. So we will be talking about that, but that's part of the issue, is we need to change from gatekeeper to enabler. We need to be the organization that is doing the big group hug. The financial impact is unknown. The impact to the tourist is pretty substantial. One of the points we make in our document is the Tomcat in Sinking Spring, voted #1 brunch in Berks County. Not a member. I found them on Yelp. Sorry. I wasn't using the visitor's guide to find places to eat. Glad I didn't. And y'all been, right? You should go. 52 different kinds of pancakes? That's the kind of a place that writers, travel writers from all over the world will do a story on that if they knew. But if they're using the Bureau, well, that's a problem. So anyway, yeah.
Can you go back a slide, because I don't want to misquote myself. Didn't you find $56,000?
Yes.
So that's not too shy. It's over half of what you need for $100,000.
Yeah, but we think you can do a full-time social and content person. So,
Oh, so you're going to use that for something else?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm fine.
So-
Okay, thanks.
Anyway, so those are the two philosophical changes that we're going to suggest tomorrow, and we're going to go deep on with the board. So here are the niches. Here's where we believe that if we can make the numbers work, if we can change to a services culture, if we can change to content curator. Niche 1, outdoor recreation. The Greater Reading region outdoor assets could be that differentiator, and here's what I mean. If you can connect all the dots and connect all the trails, you're there. You already have world-class passive outdoor with Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. You've got all these pieces. And I can't think of a destination that has the assets that you have, that has the level of assets. And what I mean by that is you've got, to some people's point, 3 out of 4 of some of your mountain biking trails. You better have done this before, or you're going to kill yourself. I think you can position yourself as, this is where Olympic hopefuls train. This is, this isn't just everybody's trail. Everybody's got trails. We've got serious trails for the, real elite. And we also have trails for the beginner. I mean, I think being able to say that we've got different varieties of trails, different varieties of experience, from the very advanced, which most places don't have, to the novice, which everybody has, I think gives you a more compelling argument. Some people we talked to said that some of your trails are considered some of the most competitive in the entire state, if not in the Northeast. The other thing that we found compelling, outside of the fact that you love the niche, we think that you've got good assets, is Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey, so that's you and 2 contiguous states, are the 3 highest spending states on outdoor recreation east of the Mississippi. The money's here. This is a very lucrative market. And I was a little startled that New Jersey ranked as high as they do, but they're right behind Pennsylvania in the amount of money that they spend. So we think that it's a fertile market to attack, and you've got the assets to do it. Local support for the brand, as I said, and there's really no need for a significant level of investment in the product. I mean, I say that everything's relative, but connecting trails is not like building a $300 million convention center. It's connecting trails. So in the big picture, it's not a huge investment. Niche number 2 is arts, culture, and when I say arts and culture, heritage has a theme and a river through that. Again, Greater Reading region arts and culture assets are unique, from the museum to Goggle Works to public art. Nobody else, we believe, will boast, when it's all said and done in downtown, we don't believe anybody's going to be able to boast as many artists in residence as you do, or will. That's a huge magnet. I don't know if anybody's been watching or been talking about the experience in Paducah, Kentucky, but Paducah, Kentucky 20 years ago was pretty dismal. And they began to do essentially what Mr. Boskoff has been doing, and that is providing space for art, providing places for people to live as they create the art. And Paducah is one of the big success stories because it's become this huge arts enclave. And once they got the media type arts down, then now it's become a hotbed of music. And they're doing the same thing with another section of town, trying to make it the musical enclave. We think that that's going to happen in downtown Reading. And because of that, this could be your next niche. Arts and culture travelers spend, on average, 50% more while they're in market than people who do not take advantage of arts and culture activities. So again, it is a lucrative market. They have money to spend. It's target rich, as I said. And you're also within easy driving distance with some other arts enclaves. I mean, clearly Philadelphia, known for arts, culture. DC, the same. So we think that there's an opportunity here. We also believe that a lot of the arts, heritage, and cultural facilities in town need some coordination with marketing. They're good at what they do, but generally, in most cases, and I don't mean to be painting with a hugely broad brush, but what we find across the country is marketers, they are not. And so is there a way that the Bureau can step in to be that glue that puts together the message that finds ways to package that arts opportunity. And I think there's some mutual partnerships there that could be developed. So we think arts and culture is number 2. That 0.5 thing, so I'm calling it 2.5. The 0.5 thing is kind of a sidecar, and that is culinary. Visitors already believe that you are a destination rich in culinary, independent restaurants. Arts and culture fans are culinary fans. They tend to line up almost exactly with the people who search for culinary finds, and that's roughly 30% of Americans say that they will not choose a destination unless they know that there's unique food to be found there. I mean, so they're on Yelp too. And so those are the same people that are saying that they're traveling for arts and culture. Again, like arts and culture, they spend generally 50% more. Those who chase culinary experiences are going to spend more while in market, but this also will require a rethinking of membership. If we're going to say that we're the culinary hotspot, then it means we got to have all of our restaurants listed and find a way to interpret that a little better. Niche number 3, I think I heard a couple of chuckles when people said that the number 1 reason that people come here is outlet shopping. But remember, the data shows that a lot of people haven't been here for 3 or 4 years or longer. That's what they remember us to be. So let's run with that. I think shopping continues to be a niche. It's just a different kind of shopping. I think we say, yeah, we got some outlet opportunities for you, but guess what? What's even cooler is these boutiques, these antique stores. I think it's just we have to design a different message, but that is still, it's what we're known for. So let's not just jettison the whole shopping experience. Let's take it, but massage it just a little bit more. Niche number 4. We were really excited to be here when you rolled out the LGBT niche back in October. And you know the data from this one because you saw it during the rollout. They travel more than any other niche. They travel more often. Greater Reading region visitors return more often than the comp set. So one of the slides Jerry didn't show you is among the comp set, the people who have experienced Reading, something like 30-some% come back more than 3 times a year. So if we can hook any of these niches, we hook them as a lifetime customer because they clearly are liking what they're finding. And finally, the LGBT crowd, generally arts and culture, and so you're tagging again. So we think that there's some opportunities there. Here's the one that I see opportunity. The question is the experienced visitor ready? And I don't know, but I cannot walk away from my gut feeling that there's something in the Hispanic Latino market. I think there's a way to communicate to those enclaves in big urban centers that they need to come, relax, and hang with us. I heard from more than one person that there is a restaurant representing every single South and Central American country within Berks County, most of it within the city of Reading. So you can do Honduran, you can do Dominican, you can do Ecuadorian. Well, right there, back to the culinary. To be able to tell somebody that you could dine through all of Central America this weekend, there's a message there. The key, though, and of course, other reason, fastest growing demographic in America, by far. It's a great base. The question is it visitor ready? Is the community desirous of being? As the LGBT community was, it's like, yeah, we want to welcome our friends to town. There's an opportunity here. Is that the same with, and I think we have to have those conversations with the community. Are they ready? If leadership in the Hispanic Latino community are interested, I think we've got an opportunity there. But we don't just go racing in there without some serious conversations to say, okay, are you guys visitor ready? Do you want to do this? Because if you want to do it, we can help. And if you don't want to do it right now, we'll wait. And when you're ready, call us. Okay? So, one last thing, and then we'll go to questions. Remember the old Get Smart? I never saw the new Get Smart with Steve Carell, so I don't know if he said it too, but the old Get Smart would say, missed it like that much. And that's, I think Jerry touched on it. It's kind of the elephant in the room. This ought to make you just sick. This is your CVB budget compared to your competitors. Okay? Now, there's a lot of reasons why this is. Part of it is state law, but still. The reason that nobody knows and nobody's really intending to come is because nobody's heard the message. The messaging has been good. We're very, very bullish on, the look of the website, the look of collateral materials, the print pieces that Crystal and her team have done over the past number of years have been just top rate. It's all there. It's just, I used to be in radio a gazillion years ago, back when they let the DJs actually pick the songs that they were going to play. And one of the reasons they quit doing that is because most DJs would get sick of a song like after 3 or 4 weeks, and we'd stop playing it. But the average radio listener would have heard that song maybe twice in that month. It's called reach and frequency. We could reach a lot of people, but we weren't hitting them on enough times. They weren't hearing it 5 times a day like we were. They were hearing it once a week. Same thing here. We got the reach, you don't have the money for frequency. And so until we begin to find ways to increase our marketing budgets to the point of, and they're not up here, our recommendation is to possibly consider what's happened in Erie, where they've gone from roughly an $800,000 budget to like $2 million, and they're doing TV for the first time, and they're seeing some serious gains. And the estimate is they believe by year 3 they will have increased their visitor spending in the region by $100 million a year, because of the amount of money that they're now putting into advertising and marketing. So one of the things I think we need to talk about, and we will talk about this with the board tomorrow, and I think we need to have a collective community-wide conversation, is this important enough that we can look past room tax? It's one of the things, unfortunately, in this country is we have somehow taught ourselves and taught everybody around us that the only way you do tourism promotion is room tax. That's just not true. There's a lot of communities that use general fund. There's some communities that use sales tax revenues. And there's a number of communities that have figured out a way to tap into the private sector. And this isn't a feel-good, I'm doing this for the team. It's no, we'll get your message out there for you, let us assist. So this is not just a public sector issue, and it's not a private sector issue alone. I think we have to come up with some ideas. And so, I would encourage all of you to begin, thinking about this slide. I know it's not fun to look at it, but you're getting outgunned by a lot. And we need to close that gap so that you've got the kind of revenues that Bucks County, Loudoun, Lancaster, Hershey-Harrisburg have. And we'll be talking tomorrow. There's a number of different funding streams that are in play in America. Some of them are interesting, some of them are legal. That came out wrong. The one that is the most compelling that we're seeing take some real footing, and it's really starting to take off in the country, is called a tourism assessment district. It's patterned after the business improvement districts that we find in most communities or most states. And do they call them bids here? Yeah, downtown. It's very similar to a DID. The question is a lot of state statutes don't allow that to happen. That was the case in California. Their DIDs were not available for tourism, so the tourism community went to Sacramento and tweaked the law, the existing law, to allow for it. So that's what I mean. It may not be legal here, but we'll work on that. So anyway, those are my last few words. It's just we've got to regain that competitiveness. You all may know, Pennsylvania had one of the best tourism grant programs in the nation. I mean, really, the 2 best grant programs in the nation was yours in Illinois. Yours was gutted. It's gone. And what was that, $200,000 to our bottom line? So right there you got a problem. And then the other issues have conspired to take what once was a $1.1 million budget down to, in the 700s. Got to get it back up there. And so, we'll work diligently and side by side with you to figure out ways to accomplish that. So with that, Awful lot of data to consume. Wide open for questions. Yeah.
Going to be available on PowerPoint to everybody? Handouts are on the web that we can download it, because there's a lot of really good information.
Yeah. I think the board has to decide in what way. I mean, the report in its final format, and actually it's not final, it's still draft until they approve it, is 170 pages. It's a lot of stuff. But I think that you're right, especially the research. Yeah.
That gives the bullet points, basically.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to do that.
There's another piece to this that is actually a marketing plan, a media plan for us. If we agree to go a certain direction, okay, how do we take the dollars we currently have and go to markets that we want to impact? And if there's additional dollars at some point, how do we go to those markets as well? Who are they, where are they, and how do we do it? We can't share that with everybody because, as Bill has said, if we hand that off to everyone and all of a sudden they hand it off to somebody else they know and it ends up in,
Harrisburg,
Allentown or someplace like that, all of a sudden they know our plan. And even though we are all friendly, we're still competitors.
Yeah. I mean, Harrisburg has been targeting Baltimore for a number of years. Well, if we think Baltimore is ours, we don't want them to know what we're planning in Baltimore. We'd like to be a little bit more stealth than that. So, yes?
Does the report go into the support services that would be needed to create the different, take advantage of the different niche markets and develop them? Or, all this, like support services and how the different, development organizations in the county, what their roles will be.
Yeah, we didn't presume to know that we should designate you should do this and you should do this and you should do that. That's a little bit outside of, and it's kind of pushy. But as we go through this strategic planning process, as we begin to develop the marketing plan, I think those kinds of opportunities will reveal themselves. Yes, and I think that's one of the things, as I said earlier, we heard from a lot of you when we were doing stakeholder research that there's just too many silos, and we've got to break those down and work together and find ways. And like in that regard, we're seeing across the country an awful lot of convention and visitor bureaus that are finding new ways to partner with arts councils, economic development units, even chambers of commerce, which they tend not to in many cases get along. And they're finding, it's like, okay, you do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. I mean, it's the same kind of a concept that we struggle with when it comes down to we're selling the same meeting clients that the hotels are. Well, you guys go do this and we're going to do this and we'll be able to cover more ground. So hopefully we'll find some of those synergies.
Can I also mention there is a group called Ride to Prosperity that's made up of all the economic development partners. And thanks.
Thank you.
We actually, the Visitors Bureau has been the, I guess, go-to or in charge for quality of life, quality of place. And as a result of research that this group, the Ride to Prosperity group, has done together, which includes the Chamber and the Greater Reading Economic Partnership, the IDA, Redesign Reading, the county economic group, the city. We actually, as a result of the research that it was initially done with that group, decided that this was an effort we wanted to undertake to have the destination assessed. And in theory, those groups, when we come back with this, we'll look at this and say, what things as economic development partners can we help to implement? There's also, John, I know you're back there, maybe you can talk about a little bit about the county, the study that's going to be done on economic development that you, as well as Ed Sawyer and Tom McEwen, are part of.
There's a proposal to consider doing an in-depth analysis for economic development purposes in the county. It hasn't been fully agreed to as of yet, but those discussions are taking place. We know, for example, that one of the findings would be we need to continue to focus on workforce and talent development. So some people are saying we don't need another study to tell us we need to do that. Some people are saying we know we want to work on quality of life, quality of place. If we can get some of the tactics to do that, it will be very helpful, but we know that's important. But one interesting comment in terms of people's perceptions and the role that social media plays, last week, several of us hosted 2 people from Oregon that are considering doing a plant expansion here. Within an hour of our conversation, one of the 2 people said, "We have been doing some online research, and on Wikipedia, Reading is the most impoverished city in America. That's going to lead to more crime, more filth, and slum-like conditions." We spent about 20 minutes just on that topic alone and told our guests that they will have the opportunity of seeing the city for themselves as part of a tour. We went by Penn State Berks. They wanted to see that for engineering school purposes. A little loop into Wyomissing, and then right through West Reading, over the bridge, up Penn Street, and people were taking pictures of the architecture. They said, "This is a fantastic looking city. We don't see signs of poverty, we don't see signs of crime, and we don't see a lot of trash out on the streets," in great part because that is all part of the Downtown Improvement District. So DID is doing a great job, and we have just exploded another myth and false perception in a couple of people's minds.
A big part of our work. I think a big part of our work
Rarick.
is a campaign to change local perception about downtown. And almost before we do anything else, that is so needed in order to not only provide a better source of income to the city from the locals, but then to also change the attitude going out of this area to visitors, businesses, young professionals.
Yeah, and to Crystal's point, we're seeing that also kind of, there's an evolution in what it means to be a destination marketing organization today. And you know, when I got into this business a gazillion years ago, it was all about, you could not do anything that wasn't communicating to people 50 miles outside of the city. Because anything within 50 miles of the city, they're just going to be a day tripper, and that's not what this is about. This is about overnight guests. And so you can't do a thing. We're seeing bureaus increasingly have a local presence, to be the local cheerleader, to be the local source for calendar of events, the arbiters of excitement about arts and culture and culinary and all these things that we're beginning to realize if we're curating all that content and we've got all this content, why are we hiding it from our own hometown? It's not like we're not taking out ads in the Eagle, you know, no offense, but but through social, and that is not our role. But is our role to communicate to the locals that this is a great place? You do that not through advertising, because nobody believes advertising. You do that through social. So I think there's a real opportunity there to be just that, and you won't be alone. Bureaus around the country are beginning to figure out that it's a little bit different. One more thing really quickly, and I got no place else to go because I got to be here tomorrow. So I'll stay as long as you want with questions, but I also want to be respectful of your time, and I think we said 4:30 and it's getting close. One other thing that destination marketing organizations are beginning to pick up on is, and this gets to the economic development strategies that you have. In fact, it's more than economic development strategy. It's a community sustainability strategy. It's a quality of life strategy. Millennials, and for those of you that were with me back in October when we spoke last, I think I probably shared this with you. Millennials, you know, a lot of boomers think that millennials are those kids. The eldest millennial turned 35 this year. They're not kids, they're in management. They got money. They're just about ready to settle down and start having kids. Well, I think we all believed this most mobile of all generations would continue to be mobile. New research is showing that they hit about 32 or 33 years old, they're putting down roots. And there is some indication these roots may be deeper than the roots that their parents put down. So here's the thing. If we don't get these kids to visit Greater Reading in their 20s, they're not going to choose this as where they're going to live when they get to 35. We have to have them do a test drive of this region, or we'll never get them. No one has ever moved to a place, well, not nobody, but almost nobody's never moved to a place they haven't visited first. No one's ever invested a business into a place they've never visited first. You gotta get them here, and it's not just about visitors. And I think that's part of the message I think we have to take out to the community at large, is this isn't about trying to be a tourist town. This is about making sure that everybody has a really positive idea and a brand image of the greater Reading region. Because only in that way will we have the best and the brightest continue to coming in and putting down roots here. Yeah.
Very last second to see if there was going to be some kind of Latin fusion into this strategic plan. I was worried. So you kept me guessing. I'm glad to see that. I mean, because the truth of the matter is, if you're not going to embrace the natural resource of the diverse Latino culture and the vibrant Latino culture you have in this community, then you're missing the boat. You're missing the boat.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased to see that was there. I think that's going to be key. Key to any kind of engagement is to engage that segment of the community. So know that you have an advocate in me to help in that regard, to bring those communities together to see what we can do to keep the city and the community going forward.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
This might be a discussion for tomorrow, but every time a slide came up, I saw the lead dogs were really, I think, our non-competitors. It was Hershey and it was Lancaster.
They have two things that we don't have. Thanks, Lisa. One, you've got Hershey's, got one of the most recognizable and largest chocolate manufacturers, along with an amusement park.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Right.
Lancaster owns the Amish shingle that hangs on their door, so we can't own that.
Mm-hmm.
What we can own and they don't have is our, I've always said this, is our outdoor, well, look out the window, those mountains, it's pretty flat, you down there. We have this river. Might it be best for our own self-worth and our own spending dollar to not compete with those two counties, those two areas, those two destinations, because we're really not alike. We don't have those until we spend the $300 million.
Right.
They also have a great sports facility in Lancaster where you're always attracting these tournaments. We don't have that. Well, we have Dan Klauser over there, and we have the wonderful baseball fields, of course. We don't have rock liddits. I don't know if you're familiar with rock liddits.
Yeah.
Until we build that, we're not going to have it. So might we have a better image of ourselves, and might it be smart for us to not try to spend those dollars competing with those two, number one and number two, and try to start to compete with the areas that look more like us, Allentown, Bethlehem, York, Lebanon, which are not doing very well as well. But if we keep trying to chase that same nickel, I don't think we'll ever get there without spending a ton more money. That, again, is obviously a challenge.
Right.
Is there any maybe thought to putting there's 1 and 2, and then putting a line, and then that's where we start?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we either have been or should be competing with those two monsters, but they are in our competitive set. So from a looking at what the consumer knows, they clearly know those brands better than they know our brand. So, but part of that is that we just haven't gotten our message out there. So can we bring a message of outdoor recreation? Can we bring an arts and culture message that begins to resonate with more people? And even if it's not as many people, let's hope it's the people who have the most money in their pocket.
Or is there an opportunity maybe to spill over some of that? We're not quite Amish country, but we sort of are.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if you're going to visit Amish country, you can't do it without taking a swing through Berks County.
Well, and that's part of the...
Your complete Amish package until you come and see it.
Yeah, that's part of the content curation, is just because it's not within our boundaries, does that mean we can't claim it as part of the experience?
I wanted to tie in with something he was saying when you're talking about looking at the competitors and we don't have this, we don't have this. Berks Jazz Fest is 25 years old, hasn't been mentioned once here, but it is 25 years old. And Roots Festival, because they want to be like Berks Jazz Fest, which they've said in the paper. Allentown, starting a jazz fest. It's their first year. They want to grow to be the Berks Jazz Fest, which has been said in the paper. People need to remember what they have and embrace that too. And you know, I have to say, I sat here for the hour and a half. I didn't even get the sunshine at the end. So, you know, but please, let's remember things that do exist, because we are a large tourist destination. 65% of our audience comes from the Mid-Atlantic coast. So let's embrace what we have.
We gave you some love in the report.
I guess.
Well, no, I mean, honestly, that's part of arts and culture in our world.
I just want to go on to
the Jazz Festival, all those.
Why we even have to think of it as a competition between other destinations. One thing that sparked in my head as we were talking was the fact that if we are really looking at those niches, if we're looking at the fact that we have strong outdoor potential, outdoor recreation potential, we have strong potential in artist communities, why don't we say, you know, yes, go to Lancaster, see, you know, experience the Amish experience, go to Hershey, experience, you know, music and chocolate, but on your way, or on your way from there, stop here to get that outdoor experience. So I think coming from the arts point of view, we are always scrambling to partner because it's how we share resources in marketing and programming. And I'm wondering if we can kind of adopt some of that attitude when it comes to marketing us on the state and regional scale, instead of always looking at everything as a competition. And yeah, we're competing for dollars, but why not create a bigger experience?
Well said.
If we can't win, why not celebrate what we have and then say, hey, we're partnering with you. And a trip to Pennsylvania is not complete without a trip.
Yeah, right.
To Reading. Because it's going to take a lot of spending until we get into that. If we're never building a Hershey Park.
Yeah.
You know,
Nor
or
should you.
maybe a Dorgan. I mean,
Yeah, nor should you.
For the study that was done, I know a lot of times for those AOI studies that it includes demographic information, which I'm sure the board will see the full report. A lot of times those also can be sliced based on that demographic information, and the comment that was made about a lot of people in that survey group were from the Philadelphia area. I think it would be important for the board to see it. I'm not sure that I need to see it or anyone else, but to really, if that report can be sliced, especially in terms of the niche marketing that you're talking about, I think that's going to have real impact where those limited marketing dollars can be used to most effect. If that makes sense. And if there are any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them later.
I'm sure we can. I have not seen those licenses, but I'll talk to Terry about that. I'm sure we can.
I think that, because the difference between a Philadelphia urban area visitor coming here versus everybody else is very, very different in how they're marketed to and so forth and so on.
Yeah. Great. What over here?
As hoteliers, we're already hubbing Reading. That's what we do. I've been to trade shows with Margot. She's here somewhere. We've been to trade shows together, and that's what we do. We hub Reading. We are a destination that is close to both Philly and Harrisburg, and so that's what we do. We sell it as, when you're in Lancaster, come visit Reading. When you're in Harrisburg, come visit Reading. So we are doing that. We've been doing that for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So a significant part of this, obviously, is this outdoor recreation and active biking. Do you feel like our hotel accommodation inventory is aligned with that? I mean, I don't know where I tell bikers, but what does the bike team say?
It's a good question. It's one of those chicken and egg kind of questions. I'm not sure that I think it comes down more towards the services that a lodging property will provide, more so than it is whether you got the right flag or the right brand or the right configuration. It really comes down to somebody, where am I going to put my bikes? Where am I going to put my gear? And so I think that, you know, as we go farther down this path, if indeed outdoor rec becomes one of the targets, then I think we need to, probably through our services manager, who will be talking, you know, directly with the hotels on a daily basis, is say, you know, we're going to chase this. It might behoove some of you to say, we're going to be bike friendly, or we're going to be kayak friendly, or we're going to be something or other. And if they can figure out that way to you know, whether it's convert a room into, you know, kayak storage or whatever it is. I think that those hotels that see that opportunity will pursue it. I think it's one of those that they just have to know that that's what we're chasing, for them to see that opportunity. Yeah.
As a hotelier, we are a hotel that is aggressively seeking out one of those outdoor organizations and trying to accommodate their needs. We've seen the opportunity, we've talked with them, and we're currently in the process of working on their needs. But there's things above and beyond out of my control that it takes a while to get those balls going. So we're working on it. So, yeah.
Well, it's been great. Jen's been a huge help with the Mountain Biking Association, providing accommodations for that, working on getting like a hose and like the bike storage. They give a room for the weekend, everybody's here. Also, they have a great location because everybody can ride out from there to get on the Spooker River Trail. And so then I'm trying to get the Spooker River Trail destination up a little bit into West Reading so that bikers know that, or riders or hikers can go in and eat, and there's a whole thing kind of. So on that end, we've been working on that kind of all together, and a lot with the Conservancy too. To make that happen.
I got a two-pronged thought, and just for your suggestion for tomorrow, is perhaps the service vacations. Those are big things in some areas where you go out and you do, and you've got the Rodale Institute, you've got the museum, you have all kinds of other spots where people could provide service. And then the reverse, the senior, we have a variety of educational institutes here where people might want to come and take a week course and see some sites too. And then also you might want to, this is my nunhood Franciscan hat. There's a number of spiritual opportunities here, so you might want to provide a link to those, and so they could go online and just see there's a spiritual talk tonight, on mindfulness or something, and come on over. So those are just some thoughts, and I'll email the rest to Lisa.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything else? Well, I want to thank you. I'll hang around for a little while if anybody wants to talk offline, and anybody wants to really be offline and online, you can catch me at some of those addresses. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great. We look forward to working with the board tomorrow. Look forward to building the media plan in the couple of weeks ahead. And Crystal, final words?
I'd just like to say thank you for everyone who participated in the study and supported the focus groups, as well as the support we received from those groups that helped to fund the study. Most importantly, this is not just about the CVB and what we need to do. This is about everybody working together to move Greater Reading forward. And there's, I got to admit, at times it was overwhelming. It was scary. I hope I'm a person that can help move this on out. But if we don't do it, we have to remember, hey, if we want to be where we are today and be doing the same thing in 10 years, fine. Nothing wrong with that. You saw from the numbers we're still doing okay. But if we really want to make a difference to Greater Reading, we want to build the economy here, we want to bring business and young professionals here, we have to make change. And change is scary, but change is also good. But we have to rally behind it. We can't all sit back and say, okay, we'll let them do it. We've got to be part of it. So again, thank you so much for your time and your attention. Bill, thank you for a wonderful job. It's appreciated. And we will keep you posted on what's next. Thank you.
It's a challenge. You hit it on the head. It's not going to be easy.